The morning air in Santa Clara carried the sweet scent of orange blossoms mixed with the faint smell of exhaust from the nearby highway. 68-year-old Elena Santos stood on her small apartment balcony, her arthritic fingers wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug filled with strong, black coffee. She watched as the California sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, thinking how different her life had become since moving in with her son Michael and his wife Sarah 3 years ago. "Mother, are you out there again?" Sarah's voice carried through the open sliding door, tinged with that familiar impatience Elena had grown accustomed to over the past months. "The coffee's getting cold, and Michael has to leave for work in 20 minutes. Elena took a slow sip from her mug, the bitter liquid warming her throat. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the day Michael had convinced her to sell her home of 42 years and move in with them. "Mom, you shouldn't be living alone anymore," he had said, his voice thick with concern as they sat in her sun-drenched kitchen. "What if something happens? What if you fall? I couldn't live with myself." She had resisted at first, her fingers tracing the worn patterns on the kitchen table where her late husband Carlos had sat every morning for 37 years before his heart gave out on a Tuesday morning much like this one. "This house has all our memories, Michael," she had whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Your father is everywhere here." "I know, Mom, I know," Michael had replied, reaching across the table to cover her hand with his. "But memories aren't enough to keep you safe. Sarah and I talked about it, and we both agree you should come live with us. We have that extra bedroom, and I promise you'll have your privacy. We'll take care of you. You won't have to worry about anything anymore." The promise echoed in Elena's mind as she stepped back into the apartment, the cool air conditioning raising goosebumps on her arms. Sarah stood by the kitchen counter, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping impatiently on her phone. The smell of burnt toast filled the small space. "I made you some eggs," Sarah said without looking up from her screen. "They're on the table." Elena walked to the small dining area where a plate of scrambled eggs sat next to 2 pieces of dark toast. She sat down slowly, her joints protesting with each movement. The eggs were cold, the texture rubbery in her mouth. "Thank you, Sarah," Elena said softly, knowing that any criticism would only lead to another argument about how ungrateful she was. Michael emerged from the bedroom, his tie slightly askew, his hair still damp from the shower. He kissed Sarah's cheek before grabbing a protein shake from the refrigerator. "Morning, Mom," he said, his voice already distant as he checked emails on his phone. "Did you sleep well?" "The usual," Elena replied. "Up a few times." Michael nodded absently, already focused on his workday. "Sarah, don't forget we have that dinner with the Hendersons tonight. And Mom, Dr. Patel's office called yesterday about your appointment next week. I moved it to Thursday so I could take you." "That's thoughtful, Michael," Elena said, though she couldn't help but notice how he referred to it as taking her rather than going with her. "Got to run," Michael said, already halfway out the door. "Love you both." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Elena alone with Sarah and the uncomfortable silence that had become their constant companion. Elena finished her cold eggs while Sarah scrolled through social media, occasionally laughing at something on her screen. The contrast between Sarah's carefree demeanor and Elena's growing unease felt like a physical presence in the room. "Sarah," Elena began carefully, "I was thinking about redecorating my room a bit. Maybe adding some curtains to match the bedspread?" Sarah looked up from her phone, her expression unreadable. "We just redid that room when you moved in, Elena. Everything matches perfectly." "I know, but it's been 3 years," Elena persisted. "A little change might be nice." "We'll see," Sarah replied, her attention already back on her phone. "Michael and I have been talking about making some changes around here anyway." Elena's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of changes?" "Nothing for you to worry about," Sarah said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just some updates we've been considering." The rest of the day passed in a blur of unease for Elena. She tried to watch television in the living room, but Sarah's constant presence made her feel like an intruder. Every time Elena shifted positions on the couch, Sarah would glance over with that same impatient expression she had worn that morning. By evening, Elena had retreated to her bedroom, a small space that had once been a home office. The walls were painted a neutral beige, the furniture minimal and impersonal. A single window looked out onto the apartment complex's parking lot, where she could watch Michael and Sarah's cars gleam under the security lights. She opened the bottom drawer of her dresser and pulled out a worn photo album. Inside were pictures of her life before moving in with Michael and Sarah, her garden in full bloom, her book club friends gathered around her dining table, Carlos smiling up at her from their anniversary trip to Napa Valley. Tears welled in her eyes as she traced the outline of her husband's face with a trembling finger. A knock at her door made her quickly wipe her eyes and close the album. "Mom?" Michael's voice called through the door. "Are you decent?" "Come in," Elena replied, sitting up straighter on the edge of her bed. Michael entered, already changed from his work clothes into casual slacks and a button-down shirt. He carried the scent of Sarah's expensive perfume with him. "Getting ready for the dinner with the Hendersons?" Elena asked, trying to sound cheerful. "Yeah," Michael said, sitting beside her on the bed. The mattress dipped under his weight, bringing him closer than they had been in weeks. "Listen, Mom, Sarah and I need to talk to you about something." Elena's stomach tightened. "What is it, dear? Is everything all right?" Michael took a deep breath, avoiding her eyes. "Sarah and I have been doing a lot of thinking lately. About our future, about what we want." Elena waited, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "We're thinking about starting a family," Michael continued, his words coming faster now. "And we've realized that this apartment isn't really big enough for a baby and, well, everything." Elena felt the air leave her lungs. "What are you saying, Michael?" "We think it might be time for you to find your own place again," Michael said, finally meeting her eyes. "A nice senior community nearby. We've done some research, and there are some really great options. We'd help you, of course, with the down payment and everything." Elena stared at him, the words not quite registering. After all his promises about taking care of her, about never letting her be alone again, he was asking her to leave. "But, you said," she began, her voice trembling. "You promised I would stay here. That you would take care of me." "And we will," Michael insisted, taking her hand. His felt warm and strong, just like Carlos's used to. "We'll visit all the time. You'll be just a few miles away. But we need the space, Mom. For our family." "Our family," Elena repeated softly. "I thought I was part of your family." "You are," Michael said quickly. "Of course you are. But, things change. People's needs change." Elena pulled her hand away. "When did you and Sarah decide this?" "It's been something we've been discussing for a while," Michael admitted. "A few months, actually. A few months." All those times Sarah had looked at her with impatience, all those moments when Michael had seemed distant, it all made sense now. They had been planning this behind her back. "I see," Elena said, her voice suddenly cold. "And when would you like me to leave?" Michael stood up, relief evident in his posture. "We were thinking maybe by the end of next month? That would give us time to prepare the nursery, and you time to find a place you like." "The end of next month," Elena repeated, nodding slowly. "That's very generous of you." "Mom, don't be like that," Michael said, his voice pleading. "This is hard for us too." "Is it?" Elena asked, looking up at him. "Is it really as hard for you as it is for me? To know that the son who promised to always take care of you is now asking you to leave so he can replace you with someone new." "That's not fair," Michael said, his voice rising. "We're not replacing you. We're just expanding our family." "Whatever helps you sleep at night, Michael," Elena replied, turning away from him. "You should go now. You don't want to be late for your dinner." Michael hesitated at the door. "We'll talk more tomorrow, Mom. When we've both had time to process this." "There's nothing more to process," Elena said without turning around. "You've made your decision." The door closed softly behind him, leaving Elena alone in the room that was no longer hers. She opened the photo album again, her tears falling freely now onto the plastic pages that protected her memories. The next morning, Elena woke before dawn, her joints stiff from a sleepless night. She moved quietly through the apartment, not wanting to wake Michael and Sarah. In the kitchen, she made coffee the way Carlos had taught her, using exactly 2 scoops of grounds for every 6 ounces of water. As the coffee brewed, she opened her laptop and began searching for senior living communities in the area. The prices made her stomach clench. Most places cost more than her entire monthly Social Security check. Even with Michael's offer of help with a down payment, she knew she couldn't afford any of them on her own. She was still staring at the screen when Sarah entered the kitchen, already dressed for her yoga class. "Up early?" Sarah asked, her voice overly bright. "Couldn't sleep," Elena replied without looking up from the computer. Sarah peered over her shoulder at the screen. "Oh, you're looking at places already. That's great. Michael was worried you'd be upset about this." Elena closed the laptop slowly. "Did he now?" "Well, of course," Sarah said, opening the refrigerator. "He cares about you, Elena. We both do. That's why we want to make sure you find somewhere nice." "Somewhere nice that I can't afford," Elena said, her voice flat. "Even with your generous offer." Sarah sighed, pulling out a carton of Greek yogurt. "We've discussed that, Michael and I. We're prepared to help with the monthly fees too, at least for the first year. After that, you can use the money from selling your house." "The money that's supposed to be my retirement fund?" Elena asked, turning to face Sarah. "The money I've been saving for 30 years? You won't need as much in a senior community," Sarah said, spooning yogurt into a bowl. "Everything's included there. Meals, cleaning, activities. It's actually quite economical when you think about it." Elena felt a wave of nausea. How long have you been planning this, Sarah? Since the day I moved in. That's not fair, Sarah replied, though she wouldn't meet Elena's eyes. We've been adjusting to having you here, just as you've been adjusting to living with us. Sometimes adjustments don't work out the way people hope. I see, Elena said softly. So this is my fault, then? For not adjusting properly? I didn't say that, Sarah said quickly. I just meant that sometimes living arrangements that seem good on paper don't work out in reality. Like your promise to take care of me? Elena asked, her voice rising. Like Michael's promise that I would never have to worry about anything again? Promises change when circumstances change, Sarah said, her voice hardening. Surely you understand that. You're not a child, Elena. No, I'm not, Elena replied, standing up so quickly that her chair scraped against the floor. I'm a grown woman who sold her home, gave up her independence, and moved in with her son because he promised to take care of her. And now, because you want to have a baby, I'm being asked to leave. Sarah's face flushed. That's not what this is about. Isn't it? Elena asked, her voice trembling with anger. Then what is it about? Tell me, Sarah. What exactly have I done to deserve this? You've done nothing, Sarah said, her voice dropping. That's the problem. You exist, and that's taking up space that we need for our future. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She stood there, speechless, as Sarah grabbed her yoga mat and headed for the door. I'll be back around 11, Sarah said, her back to Elena. We can talk more then if you want. The door clicked shut, leaving Elena alone in the kitchen that suddenly felt foreign and hostile. She sank into a chair, her body trembling with a mixture of rage and grief. After 3 years of trying to be the perfect mother-in-law, of walking on eggshells to avoid conflict, of suppressing her own needs and desires to make their life easier, this was her reward. Elena spent the morning packing her belongings into cardboard boxes she found in the apartment complex's recycling area. She worked methodically, folding clothes carefully, wrapping fragile items in towels, labeling each box with a black marker. The physical activity helped channel her anger, gave her purpose when she felt most adrift. By noon, she had packed most of her personal items. The room looked bare, impersonal again, as if she had never been there at all. She sat on the edge of the bed, surrounded by boxes, and realized she had nowhere to go. Her friends from her old neighborhood had scattered over the years, some had passed away, others had moved to be closer to their children. She was alone. Michael came home for lunch, finding her surrounded by boxes. His face fell when he saw what she had done. Mom, what are you doing? He asked, his voice strained. You don't have to leave this quickly. I thought it would be easier this way, Elena replied, not looking at him. For everyone. Michael knelt beside her, his hand hovering over her shoulder before dropping to his side. Mom, I'm sorry. I know this is difficult, but... Don't, Elena interrupted, finally turning to face him. Don't you dare apologize to me. You made a promise, Michael. You looked me in the eye and promised that I would never have to worry about anything again, that you would take care of me. And now you're breaking that promise because you want to have a baby. It's not just about having a baby, Michael insisted. It's about what's best for everyone. You'll have more independence in a senior community. You'll have people your own age to talk to, activities to do. I had people my own age to talk to, Elena said, her voice breaking. I had activities. I had a life before I gave it all up to move in with you. We never asked you to give up your life, Michael said, his voice rising in frustration. You chose to sell your house. You chose to move in with us. Because you begged me to. Elena cried, standing up. Because you told me you couldn't live with yourself if something happened to me while I was living alone. You made me feel guilty for wanting to stay in the home where I lived with your father for 37 years. I was worried about you. Michael shouted back. Is that so wrong? To worry about your mother? There's a difference between worrying and manipulating, Elena said coldly. You needed my money, didn't you? The money from selling my house. That's why you really wanted me to move in, wasn't it? Michael's face went pale. That's not true. Isn't it? Elena asked, stepping closer to him. Your business was struggling then, wasn't it? You needed an infusion of cash. And what better way to get it than to convince your aging mother to sell her home and move in with you? That's not how it happened, Michael insisted, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. Then tell me how it happened, Elena demanded. Tell me the truth, Michael. For once in your life, tell me the truth. Michael sank onto the bed, his head in his hands. The business was struggling, he admitted quietly. But that wasn't the only reason. I was worried about you, Mom. I was. But the money helped, Elena said, her voice flat. It helped, Michael conceded. But that's not why we're asking you to leave now. We genuinely need the space for the baby. Which baby? Elena asked. The one you haven't conceived yet? The one that might never exist? Or is this just another excuse to get rid of me now that you've used up my money? That's not fair, Michael said, looking up at her with wounded eyes. You know how much Sarah and I want to have children. Do I? Elena asked. Because in 3 years of living with you, I've rarely heard you discuss it. It seems to have become very important to you very suddenly. Michael stood up, his face hardening. I don't have to explain my family planning to you, Mom. The fact is, we need you to find another place to live. We're willing to help you financially, but you need to leave by the end of next month as we discussed. Or what? Elena challenged. You'll throw me out? Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Michael warned. I think you've already made it as hard as it can be, Elena replied, turning away from him. You should go back to work. I have packing to do. Michael hesitated at the door. Mom, Just go, Michael, Elena said without turning around. There's nothing more to say. The door closed behind him, and Elena sank onto the bed, her body trembling with exhaustion and grief. She had never felt so alone, so betrayed. The son she had raised, the son she had sacrificed for, had revealed himself to be a stranger. Over the next 2 weeks, Elena continued packing while simultaneously searching for affordable housing options. Every senior community she researched was either too expensive or had waiting lists months long. She had applied for subsidized housing, but was told the wait could be up to 2 years. Meanwhile, the atmosphere in the apartment grew increasingly tense. Sarah had stopped trying to make conversation, instead communicating through terse notes left on the refrigerator. Michael worked longer hours, coming home long after Elena had gone to bed and leaving before she woke up in the morning. One evening, as Elena was organizing her collection of family photographs, Sarah entered her room without knocking. I need you to start clearing out the closet, Sarah said, her voice cold. We need to start preparing the room for the nursery. Elena looked up from the photo album in her lap. I still have 3 weeks. The sooner you start, the better, Sarah replied, opening the closet door and pulling out Elena's winter coats. These can go into storage. You won't need them where you're going. Where am I going, Sarah? Elena asked, her voice quiet. Because I still haven't found a place to live. Sarah paused, a coat in her hand. What do you mean? Michael said you were looking at places. I am looking, Elena replied. But everything is either too expensive or has a long waiting list. I've applied for subsidized housing, but they told me it could be years before something becomes available. Sarah's face tightened. That's not our problem, Elena. You need to figure something out. I have figured something out, Elena said slowly. I'm going to use the money from selling my house to buy a small mobile home in a senior park. It's not ideal, but it's something I can afford. Sarah looked surprised. I didn't realize you were considering that. Why would you? Elena asked bitterly. You and Michael never asked what I wanted. You just decided what was best for me, as usual. We're trying to do what's best for everyone, Sarah insisted. No, Elena corrected her. You're doing what's best for you. There's a difference. Sarah dropped the coat back into the closet. You know, for someone who's being given a place to live and financial help, you're being awfully ungrateful. Ungrateful? Elena repeated, standing up so quickly that the photo album slid to the floor. I gave up my home, my independence, my community because your husband, my son, promised to take care of me. And now you're kicking me out so you can turn my room into a nursery for a baby that doesn't even exist yet. And I'm the one who's ungrateful? Sarah's face flushed with anger. You've been nothing but difficult since you moved in here. You criticize my cooking, you leave lights on all over the apartment, you're always underfoot when Michael and I are trying to have time together. I leave lights on because my vision isn't what it used to be. Elena shot back. I criticize your cooking because you serve me burnt food and cold eggs. And I'm underfoot because this is supposed to be my home too. Well, it won't be for much longer, Sarah retorted. And frankly, we're all looking forward to having our space back. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and cruel. Elena felt something inside her break, a final thread of hope that things might somehow work out. You know what, Sarah? Elena said, her voice suddenly calm. You're right. It's time for me to go. I'll be out by the end of the week. Sarah looked taken aback. That's sooner than we discussed. I'm sure it is, Elena replied. But I'd rather sleep in my car than spend another night under your roof, being treated like an inconvenience. That's not necessary, Sarah said, her voice softening slightly. We agreed you could stay until the end of next month. No, Elena said firmly. You want your space back? You can have it. I'll find a motel to stay in until my mobile home is ready. Sarah opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. Fine. If that's what you want. It's not what I want, Elena said, her voice cracking. It's what you want. And apparently, what you want is all that matters anymore. Sarah left without another word, leaving Elena alone with her boxes and her broken heart. She sank to the floor, picking up the fallen photo album. As she flipped through the pages, she came across a picture of Michael on his 5th birthday, his face covered in chocolate cake, his eyes shining with happiness. She remembered how she had worked 2 jobs to afford that bike he wanted so badly, how she had stayed up all night assembling it, how his face had lit up when he saw it on Christmas morning. How had that little boy grown into the man who was now casting her aside? When had his love become conditional, his promises disposable? The next few days passed in a blur of activity for Elena. She called a mobile home dealer and arranged to purchase a small pre-owned unit, using most of her remaining savings. She found a storage facility for the belongings she couldn't take with her immediately and rented a small U-Haul trailer. She called a few old acquaintances, but none were able to offer her a place to stay, even temporarily. On Thursday evening, as she was packing the last of her boxes, Michael came home early. He stood in her doorway, watching as she taped shut a box labeled kitchen items. "Mom," he began, his voice hesitant. "Sarah told me you're leaving this weekend." "That's right," Elena replied without looking up from her task. "Is there anything I can do to help?" he asked. Elena stopped what she was doing and turned to face him. "You can start by telling me the truth, Michael. All of it." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "What do you mean?" "I mean about your business," Elena said, her voice steady. "About why you really wanted me to move in with you." Michael ran a hand through his hair, avoiding her eyes. "I told you, the business was struggling, but I was also worried about you." "How struggling was it, Michael?" Elena pressed. "Were you about to lose it?" Michael sank onto the edge of the bed, his shoulders slumping. "We were 3 months away from bankruptcy," he admitted quietly. "The bank was threatening to call our loan. We had already laid off half our staff." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "And the money from selling my house?" "It saved the business," Michael said, still not looking at her. "It paid off the loan and gave us enough working capital to turn things around. We've actually had a pretty good year since then." Elena nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place. "So when you told me you were worried about me living alone." "I was worried," Michael insisted, finally meeting her eyes. "But I also knew that if you sold your house, the money could save my business. I convinced myself it was a win-win situation." "A win-win," Elena repeated softly. "You got your mother's money to save your business, and I got to lose my home and eventually be kicked out so you could have a nursery. That's your definition of a win-win?" "It wasn't supposed to be like this," Michael said, his voice pleading. "We really did think it would work out, you living with us. But Sarah and I need our space, and I'm taking up too much of it," Elena finished for him. "I understand." "Mom, I'm sorry," Michael said, standing up and reaching for her hand. "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did hurt me, Michael," Elena replied, pulling her hand away. "You hurt me more than you can possibly imagine. You used my love for you, my concern for your well-being, to manipulate me into giving up my home and my independence. And now that you have what you wanted, you're discarding me like I'm nothing more than an old piece of furniture you no longer have room for." "That's not true," Michael insisted. "We want to help you find a good place to live. We're even willing to help with the expenses." "I don't want your help," Elena said firmly. "I don't want anything from you except the truth, which I finally have. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have packing to finish." Michael stood there for a long moment, his face a mixture of guilt and frustration. "Is there anything I can say to change your mind?" "No," Elena replied, turning back to her boxes. "There isn't." Michael left without another word, and Elena continued packing, her movements methodical and precise. She was done with tears, done with explanations, done with hoping that her son might somehow become the man she had raised him to be. On Saturday morning, Elena's nephew Roberto arrived to help her move. A strapping 24-year-old with his mother's dark eyes and his father's easy smile, Roberto was the son of Elena's younger sister, Maria, who had passed away from cancer 2 years earlier. "Aunt Elena, I still can't believe they're doing this to you," Roberto said as he loaded boxes into the U-Haul trailer. "After everything you've done for Michael." "People change, Roberto," Elena replied, handing him a box of books. "Or maybe they never change at all. Maybe we just see them clearly for the first time." "Where are you going to stay until your mobile home is ready?" Roberto asked, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "I found a weekly rate motel not far from the mobile home park," Elena replied. "It's not fancy, but it's clean and safe." "You could stay with me and Sophia," Roberto offered. "We have a spare room." Elena smiled, touched by his kindness. "That's very sweet of you, Roberto, but I don't want to impose." "You wouldn't be imposing," he insisted. "We'd love to have you. Sophia's been asking about you anyway. She said she hasn't seen you since the funeral." Elena considered his offer for a moment. The thought of staying with Roberto and his wife Sofia was tempting, but she didn't want to complicate their lives with her problems. "Let me think about it," she said finally. "I'll let you know tonight." "Okay," Roberto agreed. "But the offer stands as long as you need it." By early afternoon, they had loaded all of Elena's belongings into the trailer. The apartment looked empty and impersonal again, as if she had never been there at all. Elena stood in the middle of the living room, taking one last look around. "Ready to go, Aunt Elena?" Roberto asked gently. Elena nodded, her throat tight with unshed tears. "Ready." As they carried the last of her boxes down to the trailer, Michael and Sarah returned from running errands. They stopped short when they saw the U-Haul parked in front of their building. "Mom, what's going on?" Michael asked, his eyes wide with surprise. "I thought you weren't leaving until next week." "I changed my mind," Elena replied, her voice calm. "Roberto was kind enough to help me move today." Michael looked from his mother to his cousin, his expression a mixture of guilt and embarrassment. "Roberto, I didn't know you were coming." "Sofia and I thought Aunt Elena might need some help," Roberto replied, his tone cool. "Especially since her own son seems to have abandoned her." "Roberto, that's not fair," Michael protested. "What's not fair is how you're treating your mother," Roberto shot back. "After everything she's done for you." "This is between me and my mother," Michael said, turning to Elena. "Mom, can we talk privately for a minute?" "There's nothing left to talk about, Michael," Elena replied. "I'm leaving, just like you wanted." "I never wanted you to leave like this," Michael insisted. "I wanted to help you find a good place, to make sure you were settled somewhere nice. Like the senior communities that cost more per month than I receive from Social Security?" Elena asked. "Those places?" "We were going to help you with the difference," Michael said. "I don't want your help," Elena repeated. "I don't want anything from you." Sarah stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "Elena, we never meant for this to happen this way." "Didn't you?" Elena asked, turning to face her daughter-in-law. "Because it seems to me that this is exactly what you wanted, to get rid of me so you could have your perfect little life without the inconvenience of an aging mother-in-law underfoot." "That's not true," Sarah insisted, though she wouldn't meet Elena's eyes. "Then what is true, Sarah?" Elena demanded. "Because for 3 years, I've tried to be the perfect mother-in-law. I've stayed out of your way, I've never complained about the food you serve me, I've never asked for anything. And yet, you've treated me like an intruder in my own home." "You've never treated this like your home," Sarah retorted. "You've always acted like you were just visiting, like you couldn't wait to leave." "Maybe that's because I never felt welcome here," Elena replied. "Maybe that's because from the moment I moved in, you made it clear that I was an imposition." "That's enough," Michael interrupted, stepping between them. "This isn't helping anyone." "You're right," Elena agreed. "It's not. So I'm leaving." She turned to Roberto. "Let's go." As they walked toward the U-Haul, Michael called after her, "Mom, wait." Elena stopped but didn't turn around. "Where will you go?" Michael asked, his voice cracking. "I told you," Elena replied, her back still to him. "I found a motel until my mobile home is ready." "A motel?" Michael repeated, his voice filled with disbelief. "Mom, you can't stay in a motel. That's not right." "What's not right is asking your mother to leave her home so you can have a nursery for a baby that doesn't exist yet," Elena said, finally turning to face him. "What's not right is using your mother's money to save your business and then discarding her when she's no longer useful to you. What's not right is breaking a promise to always take care of the person who sacrificed everything for you." With that, Elena turned and got into the passenger seat of the U-Haul, closing the door firmly behind her. Roberto climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb without looking back. Elena watched in the side mirror as Michael and Sarah grew smaller, their figures silhouetted against the afternoon sun. She felt a pang of something, grief, perhaps, or regret, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of relief. She was free. The motel Elena had chosen was clean but basic, with faded floral bedspreads, a small television perched on a dresser, and a bathroom that smelled faintly of bleach. It wasn't home, but it was hers, at least temporarily. Roberto helped her carry in a few essential items: clothes, toiletries, her photo albums, and Carlos's favorite armchair, which she had refused to put in storage. "Are you sure you'll be okay here, Aunt Elena?" Roberto asked, setting the armchair in the corner of the room. "I'll be fine," Elena replied, though her voice trembled slightly. "It's only for a few weeks." "About that," Roberto began hesitantly. "Sofia and I really meant it when we said you could stay with us. We have a spare room, and—" "Roberto, I appreciate the offer, I really do," Elena interrupted gently. "But I need to do this on my own. I need to figure out what comes next without relying on anyone else." Roberto nodded understandingly. "I get it. But if you change your mind, the offer stands." And Sophia wants you to come over for dinner tomorrow night. No pressure, just a home-cooked meal and some company. That sounds lovely, Elena replied with a genuine smile. Tell Sophia I'll be there. After Roberto left, Elena sat in Carlos's armchair, looking around the small room that would be her home for the next few weeks. The afternoon sun filtered through the thin curtains, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. She could hear the muffled sounds of traffic from the nearby highway, the occasional slam of a door from a neighboring room. She opened one of her photo albums, her fingers tracing the outline of a picture from her wedding day. Carlos looked so handsome in his suit, his dark hair perfectly combed, his eyes filled with love as he looked at her. She remembered how nervous she had been that day, how her hands had shaken as she repeated her vows, how Carlos had squeezed her fingers reassuringly. Forever, he had whispered to her later that night, as they danced under the stars. You and me, forever. 47 years they had had together, not nearly enough, but more than some people get. And in those 47 years, they had built a life, raised a son, created a home filled with love and laughter and memories. Now all she had left were the memories and a few boxes of belongings. Elena must have fallen asleep in the chair, because she woke with a start when someone knocked on the door. The room was dark now, the only light coming from the parking lot outside. She stood up slowly, her joints protesting, and peered through the peephole. It was Michael. Elena's heart raced as she debated whether to open the door. Part of her wanted to pretend she wasn't there, to let him think she had gone out. But another part of her, the part that was still his mother, despite everything, knew she couldn't do that. She unlocked the door and opened it a crack. Michael, what are you doing here? I had to see you, he said, his voice strained. I had to make sure you were okay. I'm fine, Elena replied, though she made no move to open the door wider. Can I come in? He asked. Please? Just for a few minutes. Elena hesitated, then stepped back and allowed him to enter. The room seemed even smaller with his tall frame filling the space. This is where you're staying? Michael asked, looking around with a pained expression. It's temporary, Elena replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. Just until my mobile home is ready. Mom, you don't have to do this, Michael said, kneeling in front of her. You can come back home. We can work something out. Elena shook her head. There is no home for me to come back to, Michael. There's your and Sarah's home, a place where I'm not wanted. That's not true, Michael insisted. Sarah's just stressed. We both are. We never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me, Elena said, her voice trembling. You broke your promise to me, Michael. You looked me in the eye and promised you would always take care of me, and you broke that promise. I know, Michael admitted, his head bowed. And I'm sorry. More sorry than I can say. Sorry doesn't fix this, Elena replied. Sorry doesn't undo the betrayal. Then what can I do? Michael asked, looking up at her with pleading eyes. Tell me what I can do to make this right. Elena considered his question for a long moment. There's nothing you can do to make this right, Michael. The trust is broken. But there is something you can do. Anything, he promised. Tell me why, Elena said softly. Tell me the whole truth. Not just about your business, but about everything. About why you really wanted me to leave. Michael took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the worn carpet. The business was part of it, but not all of it. After you moved in, Sarah and I started having problems. We argued a lot, about money, about the future, about having children. Elena listened quietly, her hands clasped in her lap. Sarah felt like we couldn't move forward with our lives with you there, Michael continued. She said it felt like we were playing house, like we were still children living with a parent. She wanted us to be a real family, just the two of us. And eventually, hopefully, a baby. So I was holding you back, Elena stated, her voice flat. In a way, yes, Michael admitted. But it was more complicated than that. I was struggling too. I loved having you there, Mom, I really did. But sometimes it felt like I was torn between two families, my family with Sarah, and my family with you. And I didn't know how to balance both. So you chose one over the other, Elena said. I didn't want to choose, Michael insisted. But Sarah gave me an ultimatum. She said it was either you or her. Elena felt a cold chill run down her spine. She actually said that? Not in so many words, Michael conceded. But it was implied. She said if we were going to have a future together, we needed our own space, without complications. Complications, Elena repeated bitterly. That's what I am to you? A complication? No, Mom, that's not what I mean, Michael protested. I just mean, things were complicated. And I handled it badly. I should have been honest with you from the beginning about everything. Yes, you should have, Elena agreed. But you weren't. And now here we are. They sat in silence for a long time, the only sound the hum of the air conditioner and the distant traffic from the highway. What happens now? Michael asked finally. Now I move on with my life, Elena replied. And you move on with yours. But you're my mother, Michael said, his voice cracking. I can't just not have you in my life. You made your choice, Michael, Elena said gently. You chose Sarah over me. You chose your business over your promise to me. You chose what was easy over what was right. That's not fair, Michael protested. It wasn't an easy choice. Maybe not, Elena conceded. But it was your choice to make. And now you have to live with the consequences. What about holidays? Birthdays? Michael asked. Are you saying I'll never see you again? I'm not saying that, Elena replied. I'm saying that things will be different. That our relationship will be different. That the trust we once had is broken, and it may never be fully repaired. Michael stood up, pacing the small room like a caged animal. There has to be something I can do to fix this. There isn't, Elena said firmly. Some things can't be fixed, Michael. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive completely. So that's it? Michael asked, stopping in front of her. We're done? After everything, we're just done? I don't know, Elena replied honestly. Maybe we're not done. But we're certainly not the same. And we may never be again. Michael sank onto the bed beside her, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I never wanted this, Mom. I never wanted to hurt you. I know, Elena said softly. But you did. And now we both have to live with that. They sat in silence for a few more minutes before Michael stood up to leave. I'll call you tomorrow, he said, his voice uncertain. Don't make promises you can't keep, Michael, Elena replied gently. Michael nodded, his eyes filled with pain. Good night, Mom. Good night, Michael. After he left, Elena locked the door and sat in Carlos's armchair, her body trembling with exhaustion and grief. The confrontation with Michael had drained her, left her feeling hollow and empty. She opened her purse and pulled out a small framed photo of Carlos that she always carried with her. Oh, Carlos, she whispered, her tears finally falling. What would you do? What would you say if you could see us now? She imagined his response, calm, measured, wise. He's still your son, Elena, he would have said. No matter what he's done, he's still your son. But you have to take care of yourself now. You have to do what's right for you. Elena wiped her eyes and stood up, her resolve strengthening. Carlos was right. She had spent her entire life taking care of others, first Carlos, then Michael, and Sarah together. It was time, finally, to take care of herself. The next evening, Elena went to Roberto and Sofia's for dinner. Their small apartment was filled with the aroma of garlic and tomatoes, the sound of Latin music playing softly from a speaker in the corner. Aunt Elena! Sofia exclaimed, greeting her with a warm hug. It's so good to see you. Come in. Sofia, a vibrant woman with curly dark hair and a ready smile, had always been one of Elena's favorite people. She and Roberto had been married for 3 years, and their home was filled with love and laughter. You didn't have to go to so much trouble, Elena said as Sofia led her to the dining table, which was set with colorful plates and glasses of red wine. It's no trouble at all, Sofia insisted. We've been wanting to have you over. Roberto told us what happened with Michael. I'm so sorry, Aunt Elena. Thank you, Sofia, Elena replied, accepting the glass of wine Roberto offered her. But it's in the past now. I'm moving forward. Roberto told us you bought a mobile home, Sofia said as she brought a steaming dish of pasta to the table. That's wonderful. You'll have your own place again. It's small, Elena cautioned. And it's in a senior park, which will be an adjustment. But it will be yours, Roberto pointed out. That's what matters. As they ate, Elena found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks. The conversation flowed easily, ranging from Roberto's work as an elementary school teacher to Sofia's efforts to start her own catering business. You know, Sofia said suddenly, I've been thinking. If you're interested, I could use some help with my catering business. Nothing too demanding, just helping me prep for events, maybe some light serving work. I can't pay much, but... I'd love to, Elena interrupted, her eyes shining. That sounds wonderful. Really? Sofia asked, delighted. That would be such a help. And it would give you something to do, a way to meet people. It would be perfect, Elena agreed. Thank you, Sofia. After dinner, as they sat on the couch with cups of coffee, Roberto brought up the subject of Michael again. He called me today, Roberto said cautiously. He wanted to know if you were really okay. What did you tell him? Elena asked. I told him you were staying with us, Roberto admitted. I know you didn't want me to, but I was worried about you staying in that motel alone. Elena sighed but didn't argue. It's fine, Roberto. What else did he say? He asked if he could come over to see you, Roberto replied. I told him I'd have to ask you first. Elena considered this for a moment. I don't think that's a good idea. Not yet. Okay, Roberto agreed. I'll let him know. You know, Sophia said gently, he's still your son, Aunt Elena. Whatever he's done, he's still your son. I know, Elena replied. But some things take time to heal. And I need to focus on myself right now, on building my new life. Of course, Sophia said, patting her hand. We understand. Later that night, as Elena lay in bed in her motel room, she thought about Sophia's words. Michael was still her son, and despite everything, a part of her would always love him. But love wasn't always enough, and trust, once broken, was difficult to repair. She thought about the mobile home she had purchased, a small 2-bedroom unit in a park about 30 minutes from Roberto and Sophia's apartment. The seller had assured her it was in good condition, and the park manager had mentioned various activities and clubs available to residents. It could be a fresh start, a chance to build a new community, a new life. But as she drifted off to sleep, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she was adrift, untethered from the life she had known for 68 years. The future stretched before her, uncertain and a little frightening, but also, perhaps, filled with possibilities she had yet to imagine. Continua a história. The following weeks passed in a blur of activity for Elena. She spent her days preparing for her move into the mobile home park, shopping for furniture and household items, and helping Sophia with small catering jobs. The work with Sophia gave her purpose and a small but steady income, and she found herself looking forward to their time together in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and sharing stories. You're a natural at this, Sophia said one afternoon as they prepared appetizers for a corporate event. You have such a steady hand with the knife work. I learned from my mother, Elena replied with a smile. She could make the most beautiful vegetable arrangements you've ever seen. We should start offering that as a service, Sophia suggested. Vegetable arrangements for parties. People would love that. Elena's heart swelled with pride at the suggestion. For years, she had been defined primarily as Michael's mother, Carlos's widow. Now, she was becoming Elena again, a woman with skills and talents of her own. Meanwhile, Michael continued to call, sometimes leaving messages that Elena would delete without listening to, other times catching her at moments when she couldn't avoid answering. Mom, I just wanted to see how you're doing, he said one evening when she answered his call by mistake. I'm fine, Michael, she replied, her voice carefully neutral. I'm moving into my new place this weekend. Can I help? He asked. I could come over with the truck, help you move your things. Roberto is helping me, Elena said. But thank you for the offer. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Mom, I miss you. Elena's heart ached at the words, but she stood firm. I miss you too, Michael. But things are different now. They don't have to be, he insisted. We can work this out. I don't think we can, Elena replied gently. Not right now. I need time. Okay, he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. I understand. But please, call me if you need anything. Anything at all. I will, Elena promised, though they both knew it was a lie. The day of the move arrived bright and clear, with a blue sky and a light breeze that carried the scent of cut grass and wildflowers. Roberto arrived early with his truck, and together they loaded Elena's belongings from the storage unit and the motel. The mobile home park, called Golden Years Village, was nestled among oak trees and well-tended gardens. Elena's new home was on a quiet street near the community center, a small but tidy unit with a small porch and a patch of grass in front. It's perfect, Elena said as they carried the first boxes inside. The interior was clean and bright, with new laminate flooring and freshly painted walls. It was smaller than her old house, much smaller than Michael and Sarah's apartment, but it was hers. We'll get you set up in no time, Roberto said cheerfully as he assembled her bed frame. By tonight, you'll be sleeping in your own bed again. As they worked, a few neighbors stopped by to introduce themselves. Margaret, a woman in her early 70s with silver hair and a warm smile, brought over a plate of homemade cookies. Welcome to the neighborhood, she said, handing the plate to Elena. I live 2 doors down. If you need anything, sugar, a cup of coffee, someone to talk to, just knock. Thank you so much, Elena replied, genuinely touched. That's very kind. We have a welcome committee meeting every first Tuesday of the month, Margaret continued. And book club on Thursdays, if you're interested. There's also water aerobics at the community center pool on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. Elena smiled, feeling a sense of belonging she hadn't realized she was missing. I might just take you up on that. By late afternoon, most of Elena's belongings were inside, though boxes still lined the walls of every room. Roberto had assembled the essential furniture, bed, couch, dining table, and Elena had begun the process of making the space feel like home. Carlos's armchair sat in the living room, facing the window that looked out onto the street. Elena had placed her favorite Afghan over the back, and a small table beside it held a lamp and a framed photo of Carlos. It looks good in here, Roberto said, surveying their work. Really good. It feels like home, Elena agreed, her voice thick with emotion. Or it will, anyway. Roberto hugged her tightly. You're going to be happy here, Aunt Elena. I can feel it. I hope so, Elena replied. After Roberto left, Elena sat in Carlos's armchair, looking around at the boxes that still needed to be unpacked. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Outside, she could hear birds singing and children playing somewhere in the distance. She had just started unpacking a box of kitchen items when there was a knock at the door. Assuming it was Margaret returning for her plate, Elena opened the door without checking the peephole. It was Michael. He stood on her small porch, holding a potted plant with vibrant purple flowers, his expression uncertain. Michael, Elena said, her voice flat with surprise. What are you doing here? I wanted to see your new place, he replied, holding out the plant. And to bring you a housewarming gift. Elena hesitated for a moment before stepping aside to allow him to enter. It's not much yet. Still mostly boxes. It's nice, Michael said, looking around. Cozy. He set the plant on the small dining table, his eyes taking in the space that would be his mother's new home. Elena watched him, wondering what he was thinking. How did you find me? She asked finally. Roberto told me where the park was, Michael admitted. I hope that's okay. I know you said you needed space, but I wanted to see you. Elena nodded slowly. It's fine. Would you like some water? I haven't had a chance to go grocery shopping yet. Water would be great, Michael replied. As Elena poured 2 glasses of water from a bottle she had in the refrigerator, Michael wandered over to the armchair where Carlos's photo sat. Grandpa Carlos, he said softly, picking up the frame. I haven't thought about him in a while. He would have been disappointed in you, Elena said without preamble, handing him a glass of water. Michael flinched at her words but didn't deny them. I know. He always taught you that family was the most important thing, Elena continued. That you take care of your own, no matter what. I know, Michael repeated, setting the photo back on the table. And I failed. Miserably. They stood in silence for a moment, the unspoken words hanging heavy between them. Sarah and I went to see a fertility specialist last week, Michael said suddenly. Elena looked up, surprised by the change in topic. Oh? The doctor said there might be some issues, Michael continued, his voice strained. We're doing more tests, but it might not be as easy as we thought. Elena felt a pang of sympathy despite herself. I'm sorry to hear that, Michael. I keep thinking, Michael said, turning to face her, about how I treated you. How I pushed you out because I wanted to make room for a baby that might never even come. How I broke my promise to take care of you because I was so focused on creating a family that I forgot I already had one. Michael, Elena began, but he held up a hand to stop her. Let me finish, he said. I need to say this. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks, about what kind of man I want to be, what kind of husband, what kind of son. And I realize I haven't been a very good son. Not for a long time. Elena listened quietly, her heart aching with a mixture of hurt and love for the man standing before her. When Dad died, Michael continued, his voice cracking, I promised myself I would take care of you, that I would never let you want for anything. And instead, I've caused you more pain than anyone else in your life. I used your love for me to manipulate you into selling your home, into giving me your money. And then, when you were no longer useful to me, I discarded you like trash. Tears streamed down Michael's face now, and Elena felt her own eyes welling up. There's no excuse for what I did, he said, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. None at all. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry for everything. Elena reached out and took his hand, her fingers wrapping around his. Oh, Michael. I miss you, Mom, he whispered, his voice breaking. I miss our Sunday morning conversations, I miss the way you used to hum while you cooked, I miss coming home and finding you reading in your chair. I miss my mother. I miss you too, Elena admitted, her own tears falling now. But that doesn't change what happened. It doesn't change the fact that you broke my trust. I know, Michael said, squeezing her hand. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it back, if you'll let me. Elena considered his words carefully. Part of her wanted to throw her arms around him, to forgive everything and go back to the way things were before. But another part of her, the part that had been hurt so deeply, knew that things could never be the same again. I can't go back to living with you and Sarah, Michael, she said finally. That part of our relationship is over. I understand, Michael replied, though his expression showed his disappointment. But I don't want to lose you completely, Elena continued. You're my son, and I love you. Despite everything, I love you. Michael's face lit up with hope. Really? Really, Elena confirmed. But things have to be different. No more secrets, no more manipulation. Just honesty, even when it's difficult. I can do that, Michael promised. I will do that. And Sarah? Elena asked gently. How does she feel about all this? Michael sighed. She's struggling. She feels guilty about how things turned out, but she's also still hurt by some of the things you said before you left. And what about you, Michael? Elena asked. How do you feel? I feel like the world's worst son, he replied with a bitter laugh. But I also feel like maybe, just maybe, I have a chance to be better. Elena smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. We both have that chance. They spent the next hour unpacking boxes together, working in a comfortable silence punctuated by occasional conversation about this or that item they uncovered. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow through the windows, Elena realized how much she had missed these simple moments with her son. I should get going, Michael said finally, looking at his watch. Sarah's expecting me for dinner. Tell her I said hello, Elena replied, walking him to the door. Mom, Michael said, turning back to her at the door, can I come back? To help you unpack, I mean. And to visit. I'd like that, Elena agreed. I'd like that very much. Michael hugged her then, a real hug that lasted longer than usual, and Elena felt something inside her begin to heal. I love you, Mom, he whispered. I love you too, Michael, she replied. After he left, Elena stood in her new living room, surrounded by boxes and bathed in the warm light of the setting sun. She thought about the conversation she had just had with Michael, about the possibility of rebuilding their relationship on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. It wouldn't be easy, she knew. There would be setbacks and difficult conversations ahead. But for the first time in months, Elena felt a sense of hope, of possibility. She had a new home, a new job with Sophia, and perhaps, a new beginning with her son. As she stood there, lost in thought, there was another knock at the door. This time, Elena checked the peephole before opening. It was Margaret from down the street, holding a casserole dish covered in aluminum foil. I hope I'm not interrupting anything, Margaret said with a warm smile. I just thought you might be too tired to cook after moving in all day. You're an angel, Elena replied, opening the door wider. Please, come in. Margaret stepped inside, her eyes taking in the partially unpacked room. Making progress, I see. Slowly but surely, Elena agreed. Would you like some water? Or tea? I think I can manage tea. Tea would be lovely, Margaret replied, setting the casserole on the counter. It's chicken and rice. Nothing fancy, but it's filling. As Elena put the kettle on, Margaret looked around the room, her eyes landing on Carlos's photo. Is this your husband? She asked gently. Yes, Elena replied. Carlos. He passed away 11 years ago. He was a handsome man, Margaret observed. You must miss him terribly. Every day, Elena agreed. But I have good memories, and that helps. My Harold passed 5 years ago, Margaret said, her voice soft with memory. Heart attack. 1 minute we were arguing about what to watch on television, the next he was gone. Just like that. Elena reached out and patted Margaret's arm. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Margaret replied. It gets easier with time, they say. And in some ways, it does. But in others, well, you learn to live with the hole in your heart, I suppose. As the kettle whistled, Elena prepared 2 mugs of tea, adding a splash of milk to each just the way she preferred it. Tell me about yourself, Elena, Margaret said as they sat at the small dining table. What brings you to Golden Years Village? Elena considered how much to share, how to explain the complicated circumstances that had led her here. In the end, she decided on a simplified version of the truth. I was living with my son and his wife, she began. But it became clear that they needed their space, so I decided to find a place of my own. Margaret nodded understandingly. It's a common story. Children love their parents, but living together can be complicated. Very complicated, Elena agreed. Well, you've landed in a good place, Margaret said. The people here are friendly, there's plenty to do if you want to stay busy, and the management keeps the park in excellent condition. It seems lovely so far, Elena replied. Everyone has been very welcoming. That's what we do here, Margaret said with a smile. We look out for each other. Which reminds me, we have a potluck tomorrow at the community center if you're interested. Nothing fancy, just a chance to meet everyone. That sounds wonderful, Elena said, genuinely pleased at the invitation. What should I bring? Just yourself, Margaret replied. There's always more than enough food. But if you insist on bringing something, a simple salad or dessert would be fine. I'll bring a dessert, Elena decided. I make a mean flan. Ooh, flan, Margaret said, her eyes lighting up. Harold always said my flan was the best he'd ever had, but I'm always willing to be proven wrong. Elena laughed, a real laugh that came from deep inside her. It's a date, then. May the best flan win. After Margaret left, Elena sat at her table, sipping the last of her tea and looking around at the boxes that still needed to be unpacked. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of excitement about the future, about the possibilities that lay ahead. She had a home of her own again, a job she enjoyed, new friends to make, and a son who, despite his mistakes, seemed genuinely committed to rebuilding their relationship. Life wasn't perfect, and perhaps it never would be again, but it was good. And for now, that was enough. The next morning, Elena woke early in her new bedroom, the sunlight streaming through the window she had left uncovered the night before. For a moment, she felt disoriented, unsure of her surroundings, but then the events of the previous day came back to her, and she smiled. She spent the morning unpacking boxes, gradually transforming the small mobile home from a storage space into a home. By noon, she had unpacked most of the kitchen and was making progress on the living room and bedroom. In the afternoon, she walked to the small grocery store just outside the mobile home park, buying ingredients for the flan she had promised to bring to the potluck. As she walked back, carrying her bags, she noticed how many residents were out and about, gardening, walking dogs, sitting on porches and chatting with neighbors. The park felt alive, vibrant, filled with the kind of community she had been missing. That evening, as she prepared the flan, Elena thought about how much her life had changed in just a few weeks. She had gone from being an unwanted guest in her son's home to being the mistress of her own domain. She had a job, new friends, and a renewed sense of purpose. The potluck the next day was everything Margaret had promised and more. The community center was filled with long tables laden with food, and the room buzzed with conversation and laughter. Elena's flan was a hit, with several people asking for the recipe. "You're quite the cook," said a man named Frank, a retired teacher with a kind face and a ready smile. "My wife was a wonderful cook, but I'm afraid I never learned much beyond the basics." "Cooking was always my therapy," Elena replied. "Especially after my husband passed away. It gave me something to focus on, a way to care for others even when I felt alone." Frank nodded understandingly. "I get that. For me, it was gardening. Still is, actually. If you're interested in starting a garden, I'd be happy to help you get started." "That's very kind of you," Elena said. "I might just take you up on that." As the afternoon wore on, Elena met more of her new neighbors: Dorothy, a retired nurse who ran the weekly book club, Arthur, a former banker who organized poker nights, and Louise, a widow who had recently taken up watercolor painting and was looking for students. "You should join us for water aerobics tomorrow morning," Louise suggested. "It's gentle on the joints, and it's a great way to start the day." "I might just do that," Elena replied, surprised to find that she actually meant it. By the time she returned home that evening, carrying a container of leftovers and several phone numbers, Elena felt more optimistic than she had in months. She had a community here, a place where she belonged, where she was valued not as someone's mother or someone's wife, but as Elena, a woman with her own skills, experiences, and wisdom to share. The following weeks settled into a comfortable routine for Elena. She worked with Sophia several times a week, helping with catering jobs and gradually taking on more responsibility. She joined the water aerobics class, the book club, and even started a small container garden on her small porch with Frank's help. Michael visited regularly, sometimes bringing Sarah with him, sometimes coming alone. Their conversations were careful at first, each of them navigating the delicate terrain of their rebuilding relationship. But gradually, as weeks turned into months, they began to find their rhythm again. "I've been thinking about starting a college fund for our future children," Michael said one afternoon as they sat on Elena's porch, sipping iced tea. "Even if we can't have biological children, we might adopt or foster. And I want to be prepared." "That's very thoughtful of you, Michael," Elena replied. "Carlos and I started saving for your college fund the day you were born. It wasn't much at first, just a few dollars here and there, but it grew over time." "Did you ever dip into it?" Michael asked. "When the business was struggling?" Elena shook her head. "Never. That was your money, for your future. We would have found another way." Michael looked down at his hands, guilt evident in his posture. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for me, Mom. For everything you still do." "You don't have to thank me," Elena replied gently. "I'm your mother. Taking care of you, loving you, that's just what I do." "But I haven't made it easy," Michael insisted. "Especially not lately." "No, you haven't," Elena agreed with a small smile. "But we're working on it, aren't we?" "We are," Michael confirmed. "And I'm grateful for the chance." In early October, as the leaves began to turn shades of gold and crimson, Elena received an unexpected phone call from Sarah. "Elena? It's Sarah. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." "Not at all, Sarah," Elena replied, surprised to hear from her daughter-in-law. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," Sarah assured her. "I was just wondering, would you be interested in having lunch sometime?" Just the two of us. Elena hesitated for a moment, considering the offer. She and Sarah had seen each other occasionally during Michael's visits, but they had never spent time alone together since Elena had moved out. I'd like that, Elena said finally. When were you thinking? Would tomorrow work? Sarah asked. I could pick you up around noon. Tomorrow would be fine, Elena agreed. I'll see you then. The next day, Elena found herself feeling nervous as she waited for Sarah to arrive. She chose a simple blue dress and cardigan, applied a light touch of makeup, and checked her reflection in the mirror several times. When Sarah arrived, she looked as polished and put together as always, but there was something different about her, a softness in her eyes, a vulnerability Elena hadn't seen before. You look nice, Sarah said as Elena got into the car. So do you, Elena replied. Where are we going? There's a little cafe downtown that I've been wanting to try, Sarah said. They supposedly have the best quiche in the city. The drive to the cafe was filled with awkward small talk about the weather and traffic, but once they were seated with their food, the conversation turned more serious. Michael told me you two have been spending more time together, Sarah began, pushing a piece of quiche around her plate with her fork. We have, Elena confirmed. He comes over most weekends. That's good, Sarah said, though she wouldn't meet Elena's eyes. He's been different since you moved out. Softer, somehow. People change when they're faced with difficult truths, Elena replied gently. Sarah nodded, still focused on her plate. I wanted to apologize, Elena. For how I treated you, for how I pushed Michael to ask you to leave. Elena listened quietly, surprised by the directness of the apology. I was wrong, Sarah continued, finally looking up at Elena. I was so focused on creating the perfect life with Michael, perfect home, perfect family, perfect future, that I lost sight of what was really important. I treated you like an obstacle to be overcome rather than a person to be loved. Why now, Sarah? Elena asked softly. Why apologize now? Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears. Because I went to see a fertility specialist last week. And the news wasn't good. The doctor said the chances of me conceiving naturally are very low. Almost non-existent. Elena reached across the table and covered Sarah's hand with her own. Oh, Sarah. I'm so sorry. I've spent so much time and energy pushing you away to make room for a baby that might never even come, Sarah said, her voice cracking. And in the process, I hurt someone who has only ever been kind to me, who has only ever tried to love me. We both made mistakes, Sarah, Elena said gently. I know I wasn't always easy to live with. I know I can be set in my ways. That's no excuse for how I treated you, Sarah insisted, wiping away a tear with the back of her hand. I was cruel, and I'm sorry. I accept your apology, Elena replied. And I hope you and Michael will consider other options if you truly want to be parents. Adoption, fostering, there are many ways to build a family. We've been talking about that, Sarah confirmed. It's still overwhelming, but we're exploring our options. After lunch, as they walked back to the car, Sarah hesitated before speaking again. Elena, she began, Michael and I were wondering if you'd like to come over for dinner next weekend. Just a small dinner, nothing fancy. To celebrate a new beginning. Elena considered the invitation for a moment. The thought of returning to the apartment where she had been made to feel so unwanted still stung, but she also recognized the significance of the invitation. I'd like that, she said finally. I'd like that very much. The dinner the following weekend was a small, intimate affair, just Elena, Michael, and Sarah. The atmosphere was careful at first, each of them navigating the delicate terrain of their rebuilding relationships. But as the evening wore on, they began to relax, to find their rhythm again. I've been taking a cooking class, Sarah announced as she served dessert, a homemade apple pie that smelled divine. I wanted to get better at it, for when we have, for the future. It's wonderful, Sarah, Elena said, taking a bite of the pie. Carlos would have loved this. Really? Sarah asked, her face lighting up with pleasure. Really, Elena confirmed. He always said the way to a person's heart was through their stomach. After dinner, as they sat in the living room with cups of coffee, Michael brought up the subject of the holidays. Thanksgiving is coming up in a few weeks, he began cautiously. And we were wondering, would you like to come here? For dinner? We could invite Roberto and Sophia too. Elena considered the invitation. Thanksgiving had always been her favorite holiday, the one holiday she had insisted on hosting even after Carlos passed away. The thought of spending it as a guest in her son's home, rather than as the host, felt strange, but also perhaps like another step forward in their healing process. I'd like that, she said finally. Very much. As Michael drove her home later that evening, Elena felt a sense of peace settle over her. The past few months had been difficult, painful, but they had also brought about changes that needed to happen. She had found her independence again, her voice, her sense of self-worth outside of her role as Michael's mother. And Michael and Sarah, in their own way, had learned important lessons about love, family, and what really matters in life. You know, Michael said as he pulled into the mobile home park, Sarah and I have been talking about names. For future children, I mean. If we adopt. Oh? Elena replied, curious. We were thinking about Carlos, Michael said softly. For a boy. And Elena, for a girl. Elena felt tears well in her eyes. Oh, Michael. That's beautiful. I want my children to know where they come from, Michael continued. To know about the grandfather they never met, and the grandmother who loved them enough to let their father find his own way, even when it hurt. Elena reached over and squeezed his arm. They'll know, Michael. I'll make sure of that. As Elena unlocked the door to her mobile home, she thought about how much her life had changed in the past few months. She had gone from feeling unwanted and discarded to feeling valued and loved. She had a home of her own, a job she enjoyed, new friends, and a renewed relationship with her son and daughter-in-law. Life wasn't perfect, and perhaps it never would be again. But as she looked around at the home she had created for herself, at the life she had rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal, Elena felt a sense of gratitude, of peace, of hope for the future. She was Elena Santos, mother, grandmother, friend, survivor. And she was exactly where she was meant to be.